We are live from our studios here in Kukumimle in Accra. This is Joy News and welcome to Ghana's leading business analysis show, Beyond the Numbers.
Well, less than 3 hours to the close of trade, we check the pulse of the market, bringing you updates on deals and key headlines shaping your business day.
We move straight into our market headlines, starting from the Jubilee House, where President Mahama is expected to hold an emergency cabinet meeting on the cocoa sector crisis, as Joy News Research estimates that an amount owed to the farmers and licensed buyers could be as high as $1 billion. Between 50,000 and 70,000 tons of beans remain unsold.
Well, Winston, big story there. Staying on cocoa, futures prices for the commodity is expected to drop further as markets begins to act on excess supply beans in Ghana and its neighbor, the Ivory Coast.
Indeed, Kofi. Now let's shift to the equities market, where the Bank of Ghana is encouraging more banks to list on the capital markets to improve governance and transparency. With pension fund assets now above 100 billion Ghana cedis, the central bank says this growing pool of long-term domestic capital can take up equity stakes in banks, helping to reduce dependence on concentrated and foreign-dominated ownership.
From equities, Winston, let's head to the fixed income space, where the secondary bond market activity softened over the week, with turnover declining 38.3% week on week to about 3.94 billion cedis. Investors opted for the short-term end of the market and accounting for 68.8% of the activities at weighted average yield of 14.25%. The long end participation remained limited more than 3 years after the domestic debt exchange program, with Data Bank Research expecting trading activities to remain soft this week.
Now to South Africa, where Ghana's Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, Emmanuel Amakufibwa, has held talks with the Africa Finance Corporation on mobilizing capital to fast-track mineral development projects. The move comes as Africa's leading gold producer looks to capture more value from its natural resources, even as irresponsible mining continues to pollute water bodies and degrade forests, raising concerns among major top buyers over the traceability of its refined gold.
And now to the City Watch, where we check the pulse of the local currency to the US dollar, as the market opens with dollar going for 10 cedis 99 pesos, with year-to-date depreciation inching towards 5%.
Now stay with us as we bring you the latest update from the equities and fixed market and income space, as well as key developments in Parliament, where key bills involving billions of cedis were signed yesterday. This is Beyond the Numbers.
You're welcome back to Beyond the Numbers. And now time for our Markets Watch. And definitely Grace Monanyun from Data Bank Research, Winston, has joined us. And it's good to test the pulse of the market because we know what is happening. Grace, I want to start from the top gainers. I mean, trading has begun. Less than 3 hours. We are supposed to close the market. Who are the top gainers and what can you actually report from the market today?
For having me on the show. As time is, we currently see EcoBank Ghana leading the gainers chart, trading at 31 cedis 50 pesos as it stands now. We also have a Standard Chartered Bank pulling up shortly with a 3 peso gain, currently trading at 29 cedis 30 pesos. We also have Power Bank pulling with a 1 peso gain, MTN as well with a 1 peso gain, all closing at 4 cedis 40 pesos.
So let's understand, I mean, why are investors opting for these shares? What is the unique story around this, companies that you just mentioned?
Well, we are currently waiting on financials from these companies, especially MTN Ghana. We know how investors are keen on the numbers when it comes to their financial results. So investors are looking out for strong numbers, and usually when they release their numbers, right after share prices go up. So investors try to lock in right now before any post-external gains and post-financial results gains coming.
That have not right quite performing the first few hours of today.
Sorry, can you take that again?
The laggards, the key laggards for today.
Right. We currently have no laggards on the market. I mean, there are lots of bids outstanding for Guinness Ghana breweries. Rather, investors are looking forward to buy the counter Just that we have a trader looking to sell at 9 cedis 29 pesos, which is way beyond market price of 8 cedis 45 pesos. But we've seen investors also raise up their bids from 8 cedis 45 pesos, which is market price, to somewhere 8 cedis 47 pesos, trying to meet up with the offer on the market. So should trade matches, I mean, we'll likely see some increase in share price from Ghana as well. But currently, we do not have any laggard in the market.
Beautiful story, no laggards, Winston. But
yes.
we want to understand the weight of the market at the moment. What is the index looking at? We understand that it's being driven by the financial sector. What can you tell us?
Yes, that is right. And most likely financial stocks are banking stocks and as well as the insurance companies composed of SIC Insurance and then EGL, which is the Enterprise Group. There are lots of offers and bids for SIC as we stand now, and also interest around the banking counters, yes, leading the index to trade fairly stable on the markets in these few days.
What do you basically make of the various, just certain investor sentiment going into the close of today's market?
Yeah, looking at what is trading, we expect investor sentiment to continue in a positive way. So investors continue to bid for higher prices on the market because interests are really on the high, liquidity is on the high as well, with investors moving away a bit from the trading market, looking at the yield compression on that front. So investors are currently interested in the equities market, which we expect to continue until the close of the year. We do not anticipate any laggard as it stands now.
At the moment, how would you measure the level of risks involved in investing on the stock market, especially for someone who is watching for the first time, following this quite thriving performance of various stocks on the market?
Yeah, I mean, stock market is very volatile. You don't know how investors will react to share price movements. An investor may feel their stock is up to a certain level where they can take profits. So they come in to take profits, and that may hurt the share price on the market. But all in all, investors currently are looking to buy on the market, which is diversify across the counters listed in the exchange, which should help the entire market perform well at the end of the day. But like I said, you don't know how an investor will behave towards a share price increase or not.
Grace, final destination, the fixed income market. How are bonds performing?
Right. Trading is not really strong as we are seeing in terms of comparing to last week's trade, but we believe that it might pick up within the course of the week to trade higher. But like we said, we do not see much activity on the secondary bond market, even though investors are looking towards the shorter term of the yield curve, which is a treasury, currently dominating the trading on the front. So we do not anticipate a lot of trade on the bonds market as it stands now.
Markets, are we expecting it to recover after the DDEP?
Most likely. I mean, investors are looking up to clarity on the government's intent to come to the market on somewhere second quarter of the year, which visibility is not yet seen. So most investors are playing wait and see approach to what happens, and then looking at the fact that yields are compressing on the treasury bond in terms of the treasury market, which is a short-term curve. Investors may want to be careful as to how they trade from now until the time government obtains, government gives out clarity to as to whether they're coming to the market or not.
Bank Research, we are very grateful for joining us here on Beyond the Numbers. Straight, we go to James Kwesi, who has been monitoring the development in Parliament for us. Yesterday, we understand that 2 key bills were passed involving huge sums of money, and James will join us with details. James, can you hear us? Hello, James.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
James, can you hear us? You're live. You're live. Can you hear us?
Yes. Isaac, I can hear you.
Absolutely. We want you to take us through what happened in Parliament yesterday. We understand 2 big bills were actually passed involving huge sums of money. What can you report?
Isaac, thank you. So yesterday, Parliament approved over 12 billion Ghana cedis for 2 key institutions in the health sector.
the Ghana Medical Trust Fund, popularly known as the Mahama Care, as well as the National Health Insurance Fund, which are the managers for the National Health Insurance Scheme, all of which is under the National Health Authority. Now, the first one which was approved was the Ghana Medical Trust Fund. A total of 2.9 billion Ghana cedis was approved for the Ghana Medical Trust Fund. And before this approval, the committee, for instance, if you look at the orders of Parliament, some of these bills are expected to be approved by a committee of a whole. So what usually happens is that when these institutions present their, their bills to Parliament or their budget to Parliament through the mother agency, which is either the Finance or the Health Ministry, when it comes to Parliament, the committee responsible sits on it, they look at the budget, and then they approve which one they think, through the Finance Ministry, take on which one they think the budgets of the country can afford. The committee prepares its report, and then it is now brought to the floor of Parliament. But for some of these subsidiary approvals that are done after the entire budget is approved, they are done through what we call the Committee of a Whole approval, which means that the entire of Parliament is dissolved into one committee, both the majority, the minority, as well as the speakership, which is chaired by the Speaker of Parliament. But yesterday, the first Deputy Speaker, Bernard Ahiafo, is the one who actually chaired this particular meeting. And they went into this closed-door meeting for over 1 hour, where the agency in charge and the committee chair in charge would take the entire of Parliament through all of the allocations and the appropriations. When any of the sides have any objection or concern, they raise it, they address all of this. The rules of Parliament are usually relaxed, which becomes a sort of an informal conversation between all of the parties. They did all of this, and then they now reconvene into the public proceedings. And when it came back, the majority chief whip, Roxy Nelson Dapamokpo, then indicated to Speaker what has been agreed on by the Committee of a Whole, where he indicated that, in fact, when you take the National Health Insurance Levy, which had some 9.2 billion Ghana cedis, the initial figure was more than the 9.2 billion Ghana cedis.
Yeah.
Then Roxy Nelson Dapamokpo indicated to the first Deputy Speaker, Bernard Ahiafo, that the figure after the meeting had changed, and so he should take note of that, and Table Office should also take note of that.
So James, if I could come in.
The initial figure was, but the indication we get is that the figure had come down. So it came down to that 9.2 billion Ghana cedis, which the Speaker put the question, the entire Parliament gave a yea to it, and then these two separate appropriations were approved by Parliament yesterday. 9.2 billion Ghana cedis for the National Health Insurance Levy, and then 2.9 billion Ghana cedis for the Mahama Care.
Thank you very much, James Agweji, for giving us this
sums of money involved there,
very
more than 4 billion. James, thank you very much for that report.
Now we go to the presidency, where the president initially gave a declaration, basically an instruction to the Lands Minister to ensure basically the challenges confronting the cocoa sector are addressed. So we are going straight there to speak to Maxwell Agbagba, who is there to give us insight on the meeting ongoing right now. Maxwell, what can you report?
Hello, Maxwell, can you hear us?
Meeting is underway, and we can report that the governor of the Bank of Ghana is in that meeting. The finance minister, who is also a cabinet minister, is also in that meeting. We know that the boss of Cocoa Board himself, Randy Abe, is also in that meeting. He arrived here about 3 hours ago. He was one of the first people who arrived here at the presidency, the Jubilee House. And that was expected because this whole issue borders and it's happening within his sector. So you'd expect that you'd be one of the first people to arrive here. So he's also in there. The Trades Minister is also in that cabinet meeting. We saw the Education Minister as well. Interior Minister Muntaka Mubarak is also in that meeting. All of them we know are cabinet ministers. All of them are in there with contributing to the deliberations going on there in the cabinet boardroom. Now, in the past 30 minutes, 30 or 1 hour, 30 minutes or 1 hour ago, we received confirmation that there will be a briefing on the outcome of that emergency meeting that is underway. So, hopefully within the next 1 hour or 2 hours, depending on how the deliberations go, we would receive an official communication from government on what the outcome of that emergency meeting, was. So we are right here at the Jubilee House. We are moving. We're waiting for that press conference that will be happening shortly. But for some of the people who've been speaking to, some of the cabinet who we've been speaking to, many of them are very optimistic that they're going to walk out of that cabinet boardroom with solutions. They tell us that they are not coming out to apportion blames or assign blames. They say that they are coming out with solutions that they say would better, the lives of cocoa farmers across the country. They tell us that they have followed the issues keenly, and they are ready to make the necessary intervention to resolve what many have described as crisis, in the cocoa sector. Earlier, here at the Jubilee House, we had President Mahama inaugurating the Presidential Advisory Group on the economy. And in his speech, during his address, he actually bemoaned the failure, for want of a better word, failure in Ghana's cocoa and oil sector, saying that we can do more, and he's hopeful that the Presidential Advisory Group on the economy that he has put together, 12 members, including him, 13 members, with him as chairman, would be able to turn things around. Of course, this cabinet meeting, we do not have members of the Presidential Advisory Group on the economy in that meeting. It's solely an emergency cabinet meeting. But it came up. The issue of cocoa came up earlier during the inauguration of Page. But I can report to you right now that the cabinet meeting is underway. We're waiting patiently for that meeting to conclude, and we'll bring you updates on what the outcome is.
It is actually watching what is happening in that cabinet meeting, and we know that you bring us all the details. Thank you very much for that wonderful report. And Winston.
Yes.
I mean, do you listen to the names of the people who are currently at the meeting? The Bank of Ghana governor is actually there.
Minister is there.
Means that it's a crunch meeting.
Very crunchy.
And the markets will be watching. But that will be our focus for our big analysis. So stay with us. After the short break, we'll be back with big analysis. This is Beyond the Numbers. This is still Beyond the Numbers. Thank you very much for staying with us. And to our big analysis, we are tracking what is happening in the cocoa space. We all understand that there's a crunch cabinet meeting where the president is meeting the top brass members of cabinet to discuss the cocoa crisis. But we have every data and every detail for you, trying to tell you what has really gone wrong and why we are at this juncture and what decision possibly will cabinet take. We are keeping tabs on what is happening in Jubilee House. We'll bring you every detail. But for now, let's head to the smart wall where all the analysis will be. Caleb Ziblim has joined us. Winston Taki this year. Cocoa, big story. And I've seen what is happening in the futures market today. Big drop today. But we all know that the crisis didn't start today. It started some years ago, and we know these are the numbers. I want you to actually walk us through how we're able to get here, because we need to tell viewers or those who are watching us how we even managed to get here, the magnitude of the problem, and maybe the decision that cabinet will probably take today.
So yes, Kofi. So a few or 2 or 3 years ago, we stopped cocoa syndication. Basically, it means that Cocoa Board doesn't have its own funds to go and buy cocoa from the market. The model then moved to the off-taker financing, where the off-taker, that's the foreign buyers, those abroad, those who buy our cocoa beans, provide farmers or the LBCs with upfront capital. So they give the LBCs about 60% of the value of the cocoa. LBCs are those who go to the farmers to buy. So the off-taker in a different country provides the buyer in Ghana here with about 60% of the value of your cocoa bag or your per ton to go to the markets and buy the cocoa. Once they deliver the cocoa to the buyer abroad, and the buyer settles the outstanding 40%. So now Cocoa Board doesn't have its own funds where they go and buy from the market directly. The off-taker finances everything. It started from 60% upfront, then 40% when deliver, but it's currently I think 80% upfront and 20% when deliver. Now the problem is that the 530 metric tons has been sold by the farmers already. They are with Cocoa Board. Some of these have been are on their way to be delivered to the buyers who will then pay the rest of it. But the problem is that some of the buyers are reluctant to pay because they are seeing our prices and comparing it to the world market.
On the spot market.
Exactly, because our price is currently above $5,000 per ton. And then the world market price is now $3,000 per ton. So no buyer is going to pay for something $5,000 per ton, but he can get it elsewhere for $3,000 per ton. If you look at Ecuador, they play spot because most of their farmers have direct access to the world market. So they can go to Ecuador and then get the value, the spot price at Ecuador right now, $3,000. So why come to Ghana and pay $5,000? Now, Ghana, we have premium cocoa, everyone says this. But then, because of the shortfall that happened in the past few years, the producers and the confectionaries are now shifted their focus. So instead of using so much cocoa, some have relaxed a bit.
Found alternatives.
They found alternatives. And also, if you look at the entire markets, they are expecting a surplus this year. But that would mean that more cocoa beans are going to come on the market. And then I think to fully appreciate this, we have to understand why cocoa prices went up in the first place. They went up because Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire could not meet their targets. Mainly Ghana, galamsey, swollen shoots, and then some weather conditions. Now, once that happens, and then Cocoa Board has to deal with it very aggressively. They started, providing farmers with insecticides, new seed variants, and all of that. And then in the past year or two, production picked up. So once you see production picking up, it means that supply is going to come into the market. Once supply comes, the price of cocoa should fall. So now it's about the question of understanding why Cocoa Board did not fully see that the price of cocoa in the international markets might fall in the next few months because it was very sharp. We are now the new farm gate price in October. By January, December, thereabouts, price started tanking. From 7,000, we are now doing $3,000 per ton.
Winston, would you say that we actually overfed the markets with information, especially on the supply side? Because with every rational economic agent, we are taught in economics that if you expect prices to be low or supply to increase for prices to be low in the future, definitely you would want to take advantage of the low prices. We were producing somewhere around 450,000 metric tons the following season. We told the market that, well, we are ready to produce more than 600,000 metric tons.
In fact, it was 700,000.
Exactly, and then we reduced it. Cote d'Ivoire, on the other hand, was also projecting very high numbers. And we've not spoken about other key players, even in the West African space, who have made our situation even worse. Nigeria is currently the world's 5th largest producer of cocoa. This year, producing close to about 60,000 metric tons this year. Cameroon is also producing, and other African countries are also producing. Feeding the market with information that we expect supply to be in excess, and possibly the reason why we are at where we are. With this kind of information in mind, why do you think that Cocoa Board decided possibly not to lock in the price, but to play along with the market shocks?
It's interesting to note that before they come to announce the prices, they go down to the farmers, assess the various stocks we have. So certainly the key challenge is not about we meeting supply. It's the fact that we have so much supplies that we can't meet demand in the market, which is basically a lot of our warehouses are full of beans. Just getting the buyer's decision to whether buy above the global price or even below, and also Cocoa Board accepting, and that margin they're posing as a debt for Cocoa Board itself. The risk has been high. But one thing we've failed to do several for years is prioritize our domestic supply. We've been always locking up our whole beans to international buyers, feeding international companies and corporations, chocolate manufacturers, and later on buy it import it into our country and then consume it. But forgetting that we have cocoa processing company. If you go through their books, they've been reporting losses for quite several years now. Why? Because we fail to meet their domestic demand in terms of beans. We basically produce 35,000 metric tons of domestic processing. The grinders are not functional. Most of the processing factories and machines have been there for years, rusting. Let's compare ourselves to Cote d'Ivoire, for instance. They had a 10-year plan. So right now, Cote d'Ivoire, just last year alone, they sold about 583,000 metric tons domestically. Why? Because they decided to add value to just that tons of cocoa, compared to about 1.3 million metric tons of cocoa that they exported. That gave them about 2.6 billion. But with the 635,000 that they sold, they added value to it. They were able to make about 1.6 billion. So that means that before you go to an international market, if you are able to add value to your cocoa, you are highly to make high profit margin. Therefore, you are able to diversify your risks against you just putting all your value. So for Ghana, for years now, we've been selling our value to the international market. People are making more from what we produce than we ourselves as a nation. And that is the strategy that I support the CEO, Randy Abe. He says that it is important to now review the funding structure. That will give access to domestic processing companies. So we have several private processing companies, but they don't meet the supply for export. Because if you look at total earnings, cocoa basically contributes about 10% of our export revenue, which is the third export highest exporter basically. And it's been years for quite some time now. The key question that we have to diagnose going forward is why we fail to use the syndicated loans for the purposes for which they were taken for. Most of them have been diverted into road funds, cocoa rules, which are not the key target. Initially, the conversation was whether these rules were leading to the cocoa farmlands, but it appeared that it has not been so, and whether the debt on them were being met, because the syndicated loans, the banks began to distrust Cocoa Board itself for meeting the deadline. So the monies come, the monies don't return back to the banks.
Now what is happening there is actually a 360. If you take a 360 view, you see there are different stakeholders involved.
Yeah.
If Cocoa Board is not able to get the monies from the trading houses to pay the LBCs for them to pay the banks, we should know that with the current funding strategy or the funding system, local banks are involved, right? So what is happening isn't only a big headache for farmers and LBCs, it's also a big headache for the banking sector, which is currently swimming in very high non-performing loan ratios, right? But we need to understand the situation from this angle, where many are saying that there was wrong forecasting. I mean, we need to actually analyze that, because I know at Cabinet today, questions will be asked about how we actually got here. Yes. Wrong forecasting, why are people bringing this into the equation? Because they believe that once prices, futures prices were as high as 7,000 and above, at the time that Ghana was setting its FOB price, it would have been very, very important to actually take advantage of the futures market and lock in the price. But Cocoa Board, you hear from others who are at Cocoa Board who are saying that, well, before you can do a proper, locking in of price, you need to have syndication. You need to show evidence that this is what you have. And we need to also put across that it's not that Cocoa Board was chased out of the syndicated loan market. It's just like what happened during the DDEP. Ghana was not chased out of the international capital market. It was because the interest rate being offered by the banks were very, very high. And so why? Because the banks, taking a cue from what had happened the previous season, said that, well, you promised to provide over 500,000 metric tons, you couldn't. There was rollover and all of that. So big risk attached to you. And I remember discussing it on the Nigerian television where some of the traders said that just by trading with Ghana in 2023-2024, they lost close to about $4 billion from Ghana's inability to actually meet the beans, because you promised to bring the beans to them at relatively lower price. You didn't. They had to buy at the spot price, which was then about $10,000. Restocking their inventories was very expensive. So Ghana was actually, a huge price was placed on Ghana in terms of the interest rates that Ghana must pay. And I remember at a point the discussion was that even if we decide to go for the syndicated loan, we might pay in excess of $150 million in interest alone. There are also conversations about access to even local capital, which we'll come to very shortly. But the question is, do we need syndication before we do forward sales?
Well, I don't think you need syndication before you do forward sales because Cocoa Board admitted that even the past year they did some sort of forward sales, though most of it was on the spot. And that's why, if you look at export earnings from last year, we did very well. I think that's the highest we've done since as far back as 2009.
Exactly.
We did $3.8 billion last year. And last year, we still benefited from future and spot. So you don't necessarily need syndication before you can, syndication before you can forward sale. But then the thing is that once you have syndication, there's assurance that
that's a good guarantee.
Exactly, because before you get a syndication, you have to go and speak with farmers, get contracts with the LBCs and all of that you're going to provide this amount of beans to Cocoa Board. And then Cocoa Board will use that to go and get an assurance for the bank. So if you have some sort of agreements with the farmers, it makes syndication easier. And then once you get syndication, you can forward sell your beans easier. But then again, you can still perform forward sales or spots no matter the funding model. Because before you talk about how much you're going to pay farmers at the farm gate price, you take everything into consideration. You take the rollovers you have, you take the price of cocoa at the moment, the forecast of cocoa, all of these things come into play. So once you are telling the market that you've logged in at a certain price, it means that this is what Ghana is going to go by. And then other players elsewhere will try and follow suit, or if not, they're going to look elsewhere for their beans. So the short answer is that you do not need syndication to forward sale. Because once you have assurance that you're going to get the beans, you can forward sell. Cocoa Board can always get assurance from the LBCs, from the farmers, that we're going to sell this amount of beans to you. Because Cocoa Board has the direct relationship with the farmers.
But they needed that before they actually projected that over 700,000 metric tons. They did the following season.
Exactly, because before you announce your farm gate price, you have to understand how much you're going to produce.
Yeah.
You can't understand that without speaking to the farmers. So Cocoa Board has direct relationship with the LBCs and the farmers. You can get assurances. Cocoa Board can get a contract with these LBCs that supply this amount of beans to us and all of that. So you do not really need syndication before you can go and forward sale. So I think the argument is a bit flawed, unless there are some nuances that are hidden from the public that we don't understand. But then you certainly don't need syndication before you can forward sale.
Well, Winston, we need to look at government's willingness to pay shortfalls, right? Because at the moment, it looks like the only way out of the equation is for government to say that, well, we've taken a decision. Whatever will come out of this equation, we will decide to pay for the shortfall. Because once you look at these figures, Cocoa Board has priced the farm gate price at 5,272. Current markets around, this morning I checked, 3,800 or 3,700, looking at where you are, maybe London or New York. It simply means that per every ton you sell, you are in pole position to actually lose about $1,328 as a loss. If you look at the total amount, which is currently a stockpile not being sold at the moment, the loss is ranging between $64 million US, about over $180 million US. This converted to cedis is about, let's say, close to about 2 billion cedis that government must find to pay for the shortfalls alone, not the total amount owed, right? Let's look at the willingness of government to pay for the shortfall, because if government had that willingness, I'm not sure we would have come to this point at the moment. Because already there is a shortfall from the gold space, 214 million USD coming from the domestic gold purchase program, which gold for reserve and all of that. And we understand the Bank of Ghana is saying that transfer that amount of money onto the government's budget for them to pay. That's close to about $2 billion in cedis for government to pay at the moment. Would you say that that is the main reason why government's a bit reluctant? Because looking at their revenues, last year we missed about 30% or 28%. This year, there's high likelihood that we might even miss again. Shortfalls expected to pay in the gold sector. Could this be the main reason why the cocoa space is suffering at the moment?
For quite some time now, we kept analyzing and kept advising government to consolidate the gains. Consolidating the gains means that they have to put structures to mitigate certain shortfalls. And these shocks are what we're experiencing now. So all the projections that government has made for the year and the review in 2026 budget, these are facts that will challenge whether they be able to manage their finances well and to close the fiscal gap. So fiscal management is quite critical. We've seen this, it's important and it's good that the challenges confronting Cocoa Board is out now, being an enabling example for gold board, basically, because they are basically running
pure example for Google board.
Exactly,
yeah.
because they are saying they are buying your good at this price when international prices also dwindle. It will certainly be the same format, same structure, but the difference is that this has already gone through its surgery, and we are diagnosing different challenges that are confronting the cocoa sector itself. One thing that is quite important that the government needs to consider in the sector is how we've been able to manage the managed by the syndicated loans. For instance, we keep hearing a lot of free fertilizer for cocoa farmers. We keep hearing a lot of free seedling for cocoa farmers. And this happened for several years. And instances where fertilizers were kept in storehouses without reaching to the farmers, smuggling and all that assets that were meant to be used for cocoa sector basically have not been quite done efficiently. And that reflected in the output. Sometimes, some years, you see a lot of attention on the cocoa investment. Later on, you have farmers smuggling key issues because prices change. But government has already invested from monies that they got from the syndicated loans. So there's always challenges on how monies are traced in the cocoa sector. Okay. Sometimes the cocoa syndicated loans were taken, and so most of them are just going to use to support the dollars, because you record instances where the syndicated loan comes, then we say the city is stabilized, because you always need them to stabilize the city, those some few years back. And that were the options we kept looking for. So until the syndicated loans were cut off, that's when we got to realize the real temperature of the economy. These are all good signals we'll be following for it too.
Well, we need to look at access to alternative financing. Well, at the moment, I'm looking at the options available to Cocoa Board. I'm like, where can Cocoa Board actually get the money? Because Cocoa Board, some years to come, if they had encountered this problem, let's say 2 or 5 years ago, they would have said that, okay, let's float cocoa bills and get money. Or let's actually go to the international capital market and possibly with good books get money. At the moment, Cocoa Board has those who bought cocoa bills. Remember the story of exactly people who bought cocoa bills, restructuring, haircuts, massive haircuts. And so because of that, Cocoa Board cannot come and tell any investor that come and buy my bonds.
And even your government has not re-entered the bond market.
Exactly, government itself is so that option is no more. If we had access to the bond market, Cocoa Board could have come in to say that let's float some cocoa bills, get money. Look at the international space. We're still under an IMF program. Government cannot borrow beyond a certain limit unless maybe they do some bilateral arrangement. Even with that, there's some restriction there. Would you say that this is one big hurdle that's also affecting Cocoa Board? Because we know that funding sources will be discussed today. How are we going to look at it? Because no more cocoa bills, capital markets capped. Are we going to fall on the local banks again?
Well, I think we're already making some windfalls from gold. So if the government wants, they can actually use the windfalls we're getting from gold to support the sector. Again, remember when the city appreciated sharply, we projected that the amount you need to service your debts has come down a bit. So the government made some savings from debt servicing. You can use that savings to support the cocoa sector in this moment. But then it's more about sustainability, because for the short term, you can find a solution. Government can always move money around and then support the cocoa board in this situation. But for the long term, if you look at the graph since May 2025, it's coming down. Projections are, if supply should remain the way it is, the price of cocoa on the market should remain almost where it is, or if not, go down further. So we have to understand it from a long-term point of view. Winston spoke about the fact that we need to do more value addition in-house. Once you do more value addition, you can retain it and then get more from the little we export. Or the government can also decide that, okay, we're not going to sell anymore, we're going to keep our beans. Once you decide to keep your beans, you are short in the market, and then in there you can get some,
you can create some price hikes,
And then remember, Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, we supply about 60% of the world beans. If Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire decide to lock heads together and then come up with some arrangements, we can reduce supply of cocoa on the markets, and then again, support the farmers in this situation. So there are some options for the short term, but we need more long-term solutions.
It's always,
I just want to end on this. So the long-term solution is cut the farm gate price. Because
really?
Another interesting thing, one thing that is happening now, which is quite visible, the European countries, most of the cocoa manufacturers are cutting down and are getting other options instead of cocoa to make their chocolates. And that is a very interesting one. Some of them are also cutting down export, especially how much it costs to transport the beans to the African continent. So they are looking for Asian and other places to get their cocoa. All these are factors that are affecting cocoa prices. Nonetheless, the quality and the amount in terms of they sustaining their manufacturing all relies on Africa. Yeah. So if we are not prioritized, just as Caleb said, we are likely to fall out. But the difference is our grinding. If we're able to grind enough of our beans, we will triple the value we export outside. If we just grinding. Let's just start from grinding. Even processing, processing is a challenge, let's grind. If we're able to grind it into powder form, we can keep it at the port for longer term period, even until prices are stable, then export it at the higher places.
You know, my biggest worry is not even what is happening now.
Yeah.
My biggest worry is the next season. Yeah. Because, you know, I come from a cocoa, you know, farming community, and then also a family, right? Now, my biggest worry is not even what is happening now, but what is going to happen next season, because the market is picking signals of excess supply in Ghana, excess supply in Ivory Coast, because whatever is happening in Ghana is the same thing happening in Ivory Coast. Farmers are not being paid. It's not just Ghana, it's Ivory Coast, happening in Ivory Coast as well. Once this happens, the futures market will be expecting relatively higher supply. It means that they're going to set very, very low, futures market, price. It means that the next season, maybe Cocoa Board will have no option, or the producer price committee will have no option than to cut, just like Caleb said, the farm gate price, because if the futures price is selling now, let's say it comes down to 2,000, you definitely can only price somewhere around 3,000 or 2,500. And with your CD currently around 10 and 11, just do that conversion. It means that you have to go to the farmer and tell the farmer the hard truth. Because sometimes, unfortunately, we play politics with the cocoa story. Because I want us to look at this. People say that, well, maybe the Cocoa Board didn't really put into consideration the fact that there were outstanding, rollovers. No. This was August 2025. The finance minister made it clear that there were outstanding cocoa contracts, and they were going to add it to as part of the reason why they couldn't even increase the cocoa price to about the 4,000 or 6,000 that farmers were expecting. Let's even come to when we came to the market twice, even this planting season, because cocoa prices were increased twice. Yeah. Remember that somewhere October, the finance minister came and said that we are adding additional 400 cedis to every bag that you sell. And that, for me, in October, was at the point where I said, no, we possibly will be heading to a very wrong direction. We might have to find money to pay for shortfall, because the market was responding to the supply. We were, on the other hand, increasing farm gate price. Very difficult for us, and we are facing that situation currently.
Take point 6, which is very interesting. It says margin fees and rates to all other stakeholders, including Cocoa Board, remain unchanged. And that tells you that these are all factors, elements that affect the pricing. One thing you mentioned, which I quite second, is the fact that you can't keep politicizing a commodity. Yeah. Because when the commodity prices are going up, just as gold is going up, it can have the economic boost, the GDP, the overall outlook, all looking good. The moment they fall, you must also take the backlash. Basically, because you can't say, remember the Farmers' Day celebration, cocoa farmers, and I was just asking what factors went into play, what are the considerations, just as the numbers are telling. If you go through the numbers, it tells you that there are details behind those numbers, and that are cautions we need to take as a country going forward.
Now, Winston and Caleb, my question is, we are expecting it will come. How will Cocoa Board and Finance Ministry announce a lower than expected, or a lower than what we are currently having in terms of the farm gate price to farmers next season? Will it be possible? Because that will be a big headline in economic headlines, and even in the world of business, to reduce farm gate price. Currently is around 3,400 or about 3,000. To bring it to this 2,800, that will be some big news to communicate to cocoa farmers, and how they'll take it, I don't know.
Well, they always say your hindsight is always 20/20. So because we've come this far into the market, we can tell that, okay, Cocoa Board should have seen this coming. But then the thing is that we have to understand that Cocoa Board was set up to protect the farmer. That's why farmers sign on to the Cocoa Board model. You tell farmers that...
So pay the shortfall.
You tell farmers that we're going to protect you when prices come down. That's why usually they don't give you the full FOB price, because you have to keep some for cocoa butter to support you later.
Exactly.
So this is the moment you have to support the farmers. Some farmers rely on and most of Ghanaian farms are small-scale farmers. They don't have large-scale farms where they can take a hit. Most of them, they rely on just a couple of bags. So if you're going to cut the farm gate price at that level, it's going to affect farmers.
What has happened to the Cocoa Stabilization Fund? There was supposed to be a fund like that to support farmers in times like this. I don't know what has happened to it. In 2017, 2018, when we had to sell light cocoa at the price of premium, government fell on that, paid some additional subsidies, and actually paid the money to farmers. It happened in 2017, 2018, we shouldn't forget. But the question is, that cocoa fund, that stabilization fund was set for some of this thing. What has happened to it, Winston?
I don't know. Basically, we need to just look at Cocoa Board to understand what's happening from that sector. But going forward, the European market has been watching Ghana, especially due to the rising conversation about galamsey, its effect, water bodies around cocoa farms, full of mercury, and so the quality of cocoa now is being diagnosed. There are standards. Ghana's standard for testing our cocoa value has gone high, so we have to be careful. Galamsey is still surely a threat. Our recent analysis of Joy's story putting out tells you that indeed, when it comes to cocoa conversation, most of the farmers were lamenting they are likely to put out their lands for cocoa production because they see gold doing good, because they are standing between two amazing minerals, commodities, gold, cocoa. Which option do you take? You've invested so much for years. You've seen the value of what gold can give within a short period of time. So they are forced to give away their farmlands for cocoa, even to the extent that this will have ripple effect on not just the cocoa communities, but on the environment, on our health, and as individuals. Water bodies already being challenged. And I keep wondering why, for several years, government upon government, they kept burning some fines, they kept burning tractors. Every day they are burning something, but still, the people are still going there. What is happening? What is the real mystery? Who are those?
In our documentary, A Tax for Galamsey.
Yes, A Tax for Galamsey is coming.
In fact, Jacobo is one place that cocoa farming is really heavy there. So if you can imagine, if Galamsey is going on in Jacobo, definitely some cocoa farms would have to be sold for actually Galamsey site. And in fact, I would say that the only reason why some cocoa farmers are still holding on to their farms is because they want to pass it on as inheritance. And the holding structure of our cocoa farm, because sometimes it's actually equate to about 5 members of the family, so one person cannot just take a decision that they are going to sell it. That is the only thing saving us at the moment. But once the cocoa farms learn from the 98-year-old woman or 75-year-old or the 68-year-old woman or man to his Gen Z son, who probably will be looking for a much higher returns.
Yeah.
What happens to our cocoa farms?
We decided to go and trade stock or go and even put it on super bets or one of those platforms. But nonetheless, these are threats that are quite realistic for not just us as a nation, but as a global commodity market. We have been second. We were first before.
Yeah.
We lost our place, and still we are chasing the whole wagon, and that is a serious issue we need to keep discussing.
Final words.
Well, I don't see the government reducing the farm gate price anytime soon because of the politics around it. And then if you listen to the Cocoa Board CEO, he says he wants to touch the bank's reserve ratio. We don't know how the banks will take this, whether the central bank governor is open to this. So it's more about a long-term sustainable financing. And the short-term, Cocoa Board needs to protect the farmer. Finance Ministry has the money somewhere, they can find the money. They're getting shortfalls, they're getting some windfalls from gold, there's debt service and all of that. So I think the government needs to find the money somewhere, protect farmers, let Cocoa Board do what they promise the farmers that are going to do, and then in the long term, maybe tap the cash reserve.
If you observe Acto Force's demeanor, he doesn't give anything for free.
Yeah.
So there has to be a give and take somewhere, basically.
Well, definitely farmers are watching, the LBCs are watching what is happening in cabinet. Whatever the case, cocoa farmers and LBCs are looking for solution to that over 10 billion cedis debt owed them. This has been Beyond the Numbers, and I did this with
Winston Taki.
Caleb Ziblin.
See you on Friday.